I stood on the front porch of a house I wasn't supposed to own, staring at the woman who had once looked me in the eyes and whispered, "You'll never be part of this family." She looked at me through the narrow crack of the door, her eyes wide with disbelief, her mouth parted slightly like she had just seen a ghost. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The keys were already in my hand. The real estate agent had done her job. The deed had been signed. And the house, her house, was now mine. The silence between us buzzed like a wire about to snap. She stepped outside, trembling, her robe hanging loosely on her shoulders. "This is my home," she said, her voice breaking. "Not anymore," I replied. "You sold it. And now it belongs to me." She staggered back a step like she'd been struck. She didn't know I was the buyer. She didn't know the lengths I had gone to. She didn't know the cost I had paid. But she had ruined my wedding day. And I had waited patiently, calmly for this moment. Because when she walked into that reception hall and made the announcement that shattered everything, I knew I wouldn't fight her in public. I'd destroy her in private. And it started with the one thing she cared about more than anything else in the world, her precious house. My name is Camille Rhodes. I'm 29 years old, and I was never the kind of woman who dreamt of fairy tale weddings. But I did expect respect, especially from my future husband's family. Unfortunately, that expectation crumbled the moment I met his mother, Loretta. From the start, Loretta made it clear she thought I wasn't good enough for her only son, Thomas. She smiled through gritted teeth, made backhanded compliments, and tried to control every inch of our relationship. But I kept quiet for Thomas's sake. I let her pick the wedding venue. I let her rearrange my guest list. I let her think she'd won. Until she went too far and tried to humiliate me in front of everyone I loved. That was the day I decided I wouldn't let her ruin anything else. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I would take everything she held dear, starting with her home. I met Thomas at a charity run on a rainy spring morning. I wasn't even supposed to be there. My roommate had dragged me out of bed to get some fresh air after a rough breakup. I showed up grumpy, drenched, and hungry. But then he was there, holding a banana and an extra towel like he was expecting me. We talked for 3 hours after the race. He wasn't just handsome, he was kind, thoughtful, steady. The kind of man who asks questions and listens to the answers. He worked in architecture, owned a modest condo, and had a warm, disarming smile. I was a freelance stylist, still hustling to build my client list. From the outside, we didn't seem like a match. But from the very beginning, Thomas made me feel like I was home. It didn't take long for things to turn serious. Within a year, he asked me to move in. A year later, he proposed. Everything was perfect until I met Loretta. She was elegant and sharp, the kind of woman who always wore pearl earrings, even on Sunday mornings. At first, I thought her coolness was just reserve. But her tone always had a sting. "Oh, you do freelance work? How creative," she'd say, as if it were a polite way of saying unemployed. She called my studio apartment cozy and my parents bohemian. When Thomas wasn't around, her comments grew bolder. "My son deserves someone grounded," she once whispered after our engagement dinner. I told myself she was just being protective. I didn't want to be the kind of woman who couldn't get along with her future mother-in-law. So I smiled. I swallowed every jab. I agreed when she said she wanted to help with the wedding. "It's tradition," she said. "Let me be involved, just to take the pressure off you." I should have known better. She immediately took control. She booked a venue before I even saw it. She changed the florist I'd already hired. She rewrote the guest list and removed half of my friends. When I brought it up to Thomas, he brushed it off. "That's just how she is," he'd say. "Let her have her moment. It'll make things easier." I hated that I let it go. I was raised in a small but loving home. My parents were public school teachers, not wealthy, but rich in kindness. They taught me to pick my battles, to value peace over pride. So that's what I did. I kept my head down, convinced myself that after the wedding, things would calm down. But Loretta had no intention of calming down. She started calling me late at night, pretending to be checking in, but really digging for dirt. "Are you sure you want to work after marriage? Maybe you should focus on supporting Thomas." She asked if I planned to fix my teeth before the big day. She even suggested I wear her old wedding dress, a lace monstrosity from 1982 that smelled like mothballs. When I said no, she told Thomas the First was ungrateful and didn't value family. The wedge between us grew deeper. And yet, I still held my tongue. Even when she moved the wedding date up by 2 weeks without asking. Even when she told my maid of honor she wasn't welcome at the rehearsal dinner. Even when she sat Thomas down and said she'd reconsider attending at all if I didn't start showing more humility. The final straw came a week before the wedding. She called and said she wanted to meet me at the venue to go over a few details. When I arrived, she had a clipboard and a fake smile. She walked me through the entire ceremony, but the version she'd planned was different. There was no mention of my parents. No mention of my name in the printed programs. Her own niece was set to walk me down the aisle, not my father. She'd even arranged for me to arrive in a car service, not the one my dad restored just for the event. When I tried to object, she raised an eyebrow and said, "Sweetheart, you're marrying into a real family now. It's time to act like it." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I looked her in the eyes and nodded slowly. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. I realized I'd been trying to earn her approval when all she wanted was control. And I wasn't going to give it to her anymore. Not on my wedding day. Not ever again. So I smiled politely, thanked her for her hard work, and left the venue with a plan beginning to form in my mind. A plan that would take everything she thought she owned. Everything she held power over. I didn't just want to stop her. I wanted to win. And I already knew exactly where to start. With the house she flaunted in every conversation. The house she made sure I knew I'd never be welcome in. Her pride and joy. Her fortress. Her kingdom. Soon, it would be mine. It happened the day before the wedding. My dress was hanging in the studio, steaming gently in the sunlight, and the flowers were finally the ones I had chosen, soft dahlias and pale ranunculus, not Loretta's original red roses. I had reclaimed a few small things. Tiny victories. My best friend Maria was back on the guest list after I put my foot down. My father would still walk me down the aisle, even if Loretta called it inappropriate. I was clinging to those slivers of hope. And then, just as I finished tying ribbons around the bridesmaids' gift boxes, my phone buzzed. It was a message from the venue. Just confirming final changes. Loretta Mitchell to deliver opening speech after processional. New table arrangement and catering list attached. Final layout approved by Loretta. I stared at it, heart thudding. I hadn't made any changes. I opened the attachment. She had rearranged everything. My family was moved to the back of the hall. My college friends were squeezed onto one table near the kitchen. And the catering list, she had removed the vegan and gluten-free options I'd spent hours coordinating for my guests. Even the wine had been changed. Worse, Loretta had inserted herself into the ceremony. She would speak before me and Thomas exchanged vows. She had rewritten the script. She didn't just want to steal attention, she wanted to rewrite our love story. I sat frozen, phone in hand, fingers trembling with rage. This was no longer just a controlling mother-in-law trying to feel involved. This was sabotage. And Thomas? When I called him, his voice was full of exhaustion. "Look, can we not do this right now? She just wants to help. I'll talk to her after the ceremony, okay? Let's just get through the day." I couldn't believe it. Get through the day? This was supposed to be our day. But Loretta had turned it into a performance. A power play. A warning shot that I would never truly be family unless I bent to her will. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table with the seating chart, the catering list, the schedule, all rewritten in her flawless cursive handwriting. And I thought about how many times I'd bitten my tongue. How many times I'd let her undermine me, gaslight me, rewrite my choices, and erase my voice. And how Thomas, the man I loved, had let her do it. No more. I pulled out my laptop and opened the real estate listing I had bookmarked weeks ago, almost as a joke. Loretta's house. The sprawling colonial on Maple Hill Road. The one she inherited from her parents and reminded us about every holiday. This house has been in the family since the 1940s, she'd say with that dramatic sigh, as though she personally carved it out of stone. What she didn't know, and what I had discovered one afternoon while researching gift ideas, was that the house was no longer solely hers. She had quietly put it into a living trust for tax purposes, and her cousin, an accountant with a gambling problem, had listed it for a private sale. I had stumbled upon the listing weeks ago on a niche estate site. At the time, I saved it as a curiosity. But now it was something else. It was an opportunity. My parents had recently sold a small rental property they owned and had offered to help with our future down payment. I had politely declined, but the money was still sitting in a joint account. If I pooled it with my own savings and some help from Maria's uncle, a retired broker who adored me, I could make an offer. A quiet, fast offer. One Loretta wouldn't see coming. I spent that night making phone calls. By morning, the deal was in motion. While Loretta was rehearsing her speech in front of the mirror, imagining her moment of glory, I was signing preliminary contracts on her beloved house. While she was rearranging the napkins and berating the wedding planner for allowing soft pink linens, I was wiring funds into escrow. I didn't cancel the wedding. I didn't scream or demand an apology. I let the day unfold exactly as she planned. She got her moment. But the next one would be mine. The morning of the wedding was filled with lavender perfume, clinking glasses, and photographers clicking around the estate we rented. Loretta floated through the hall in a champagne-colored gown she had not shown me beforehand. It shimmered like a bridal dress, long and fitted, with a lace bodice and a pearl-trimmed veil tucked into her bun. If I hadn't known better, I'd have thought she was the bride. My makeup artist whispered, "She's really going for it, huh?" And I laughed under my breath. She delivered her grand speech at the start of the ceremony, about family values, about tradition, about how she taught Thomas how to love a strong woman, all without ever saying my name. When she stepped off the podium, smiling, the guests applauded hesitantly. I watched her as she sat down beside the man who used to defend me. Thomas didn't even look at me. We exchanged vows. The ceremony ended. Photos were taken. Toasts were raised. But I wasn't there for Loretta's fantasy. I wasn't the porcelain doll she tried to paint into her perfect tableau. I was there with a secret, and that secret hummed in my chest like a second heartbeat. Because as she twirled and posed and thanked people for attending her son's beautiful wedding, she had no idea she was dancing on borrowed floors. Her home was mine. And in a few short days, she would find out. The honeymoon was brief. Thomas insisted on a low-key week at a cabin instead of the Italy trip I'd saved for. He said it was too expensive. I didn't argue. I needed time alone. Space to think. When we returned, Loretta was already back in her role as queen of everything. She had hosted a brunch at her house for close family without inviting my parents. She sent me passive-aggressive photos of the table settings and "what a shame" captions. Then came the call. She wanted to help us find our first home. "I've already spoken with Thomas," she said. "And there's a charming little place 3 blocks from me. Needs some updating, but you'll be near family, and I can drop by to help with chores. I just love being involved." I declined. She pushed. She called Thomas. He agreed. He didn't even ask me. The next thing I knew, she had toured the home on our behalf. She took videos, narrated as if she were the listing agent, and said, "I told the seller you'll probably put in an offer by Friday." I snapped. I told her to stop interfering, that this was our decision. I reminded her she wasn't our real estate agent, nor our financial planner, nor our voice. She replied with cold dignity, "You're welcome, dear. You'll understand one day. If you're still married." It was a threat wrapped in lace. That night, I stared at my reflection, searching for the woman who used to be confident, warm, secure. She was fading under Loretta's long shadow. But not for long. Because the final paperwork had come through. Loretta's house now legally belonged to me. She just didn't know it yet. I waited one more week. I wanted her to feel completely secure. To strut. To call vendors and garden planners. I wanted her to sign one more check for a bathroom remodel. She'd been bragging about it to everyone, how she was updating the powder room with gold hardware and Italian tile. I have impeccable taste, she wrote on Facebook. Unlike some people who think home goods is luxury. I took a screenshot. Then, on a rainy Wednesday, I sent the letter. Not a rude one. Just a calm, notarized letter from my lawyer informing the current tenant, Loretta, that the property had been sold and that her presence was no longer legally protected without a lease agreement. She would have 30 days to vacate or negotiate a rental contract with the new owner. Within hours, she called me. Not Thomas. Me. Her voice was shaking with disbelief and fury. "What kind of joke is this?" she asked. "You think you can scare me with fake paperwork?" I answered calmly, "It's not a joke, Loretta. I bought the house. Ask your cousin if you don't believe me." There was a pause so long I thought she had hung up. Then she screamed. I held the phone away from my ear. "You malicious little brat. You did this to humiliate me." "No," I said, "you did that all by yourself." I just stopped pretending I didn't notice. She threatened lawyers. I already had mine. She cried to Thomas. He asked me if it was true. When I confirmed it, he whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Because you wouldn't have stopped her." The next morning, Loretta showed up at our doorstep. No text, no warning. She had not seen my face since the letter arrived, and now she came wearing pearls, a trench coat, and a brittle smile, as if politeness could undo what she had spent years building. She didn't knock. She banged. I opened the door slowly. Her eyes were wide, almost wild. She stepped forward, assuming I'd move aside. I didn't. "This is insane," she said. "You cannot just buy someone's home. What kind of woman does something so vindictive?" I tilted my head. I learned from the best. She pushed past me and marched into our living room. Thomas was there, frozen mid-sip of his coffee. She threw up her arms. "Do you know what your wife has done? She's throwing me out of my own house. Your family's home. Your birthplace." He looked at her for a long moment. Then, without a word, he set the cup down and left the room. Loretta turned to me, her voice cracking. "How dare you go behind my back? How did you even find out it was for sale?" "I have eyes. And contacts. And money," she spat. "You couldn't afford a bouquet without my son's help. What, did you scam a bank?" I smiled. "I worked. I saved. And your cousin helped." She blinked. "Which cousin?" "Miranda." The color drained from her face. "She hates me," she whispered. "No," I corrected. "She saw you. There's a difference." Loretta backed into the chair, shaking her head. "Do you think this makes you the bigger person?" she said. "You've ruined everything." "No," I replied calmly. "You did that when you tried to destroy my wedding. When you told vendors I was unstable. When you made fun of my family. When you posted on Facebook that I was marrying up. I just made sure you knew I wasn't scared of you anymore. You want to humiliate me?" "No," I said, leaning closer. "I want you to know your power is gone." For the first time in years, Loretta had nothing to say. Just trembling lips and heavy silence. The woman who controlled everything, the narrative, the guest lists, the family photos, the traditions, sat in my living room, defeated, while her own name was being removed from the deed she never believed anyone could touch. Later that week, I offered her a simple lease agreement, 6 months, market rent, no favors. She ripped it in half and stormed out. 3 days later, the moving trucks came. Loretta left behind a cracked mirror in the guest bathroom and a box of old linens in the attic. And a note. It said, "You'll never be family." I burned it. Because I wasn't chasing her approval anymore. I had built my own peace on her foundation. 6 months later, Thomas and I finally hosted the celebration we never had. It was small, but it was ours. No tantrums about linens. No whispered judgments about seating charts. Just people who loved us, laughing in the backyard of the home we built on defiance and healing. That house, Loretta's former domain, looked different now. We painted the shutters white. We tore down the rose bushes she always bragged about and planted lemon trees. I left one photo of hers on the wall, a black and white portrait of Thomas at age 7. He asked me to keep it. I agreed. Not for her, but for him. As for Loretta, she moved into a rental across town. I heard from Miranda that she blames bad luck for everything. She never apologized. Never acknowledged the hurt she caused. But she stays quiet now, and that's enough for me. Thomas and I are stronger than ever. He saw what I endured and how I stood up, not just to his mother, but for myself. That changed something between us. It's easy to say you'll stand by your partner. It's something else to watch them reclaim their dignity, even when it's uncomfortable for you. And I don't regret a second of it. I used to think power belonged to the loudest person in the room, the one who slammed doors and sneered from behind pearl necklaces. But now I know better. Real power is choosing peace when chaos is handed to you. It's reclaiming your voice when others try to write your story. And sometimes, it's buying the house of the woman who tried to erase you, just to remind her and yourself that no one decides your worth but you. So if someone tries to ruin your happiness because it threatens their control, ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped playing by their rules? You might find the most unexpected revenge is living well in their favorite room. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments.